Terrakion is coming to Tier 5 raids in Pokemon Go, starting today. Yeah, November 26th, Cobalion is out of here, and we are finally getting a meta-viable raid-attacking Pokemon, Terrakion. Between that and the Tier 3 Charge Team event leaving us, we finally have a reason to start doing Tier 5 raids again, am I right? So in this video, I'm going to be going over the best counters to the Terrakion raid, and I'll also be going over Terrakion's use in the meta. So here we have a graph of the counters to the Terrakion raid using level 40 counters, unless stated otherwise, against a Tier 5 Terrakion raid boss using all of its movesets average. So that's Smackdown, Zen Headbutt, Earthquake, Rock Slide, and the other one, Earthquake. Did I say Earthquake twice? Did I say Close Combat? I hope I said Close Combat. This is using Best Friendship and no dodging. So if you're not familiar with the swag graph here, the y-axis here is the damage per second. So the higher up your Pokemon is, the faster it deals damage to the raid boss, allowing you to clear the raid boss even sooner, which is why there is a duo DPS cutoff line. If you're looking to do the duo, things above this line will be able to potentiate the duo. If you're curious about the trio DPS, the trio is like 17 DPS. This graph starts at 20, so just about everything on this graph should be viable for the trio, even at like probably level 30, really. Then the x-axis is total damage output, which is a more useful metric for a Pokemon's tankiness. It's basically how much damage they deal before they get taken out themselves. As such, more to the right the Pokemon is, the more tanky it will be for this fight, and the more up and to the right the Pokemon is, well, the more ultimate it will be as a Terrakion counter. And for the benefit of people that are curious, I do have a double Relobby Avoid TDO line here, which is based off of the duo. However, everything that has duo-worthy DPS is already to the right of the line, so it's like, hey, here's the TDO line, everything's working. At least we have that validation, right? So who is the Omega counter to the Terrakion raid? Well, it's Psystrike Mewtwo, of course, and if you're sitting like, oh man, Ryan Swag, I already have maxed out Psychic Mewtwo's, but I'm not gonna dump all this Stardust to max out a Psystrike one. Well, Psychic isn't all that far behind, and it is also definitely worth for the duo if you are into that. Now you will notice here that the old champion Metagross is above Psystrike Mewtwo's level with a weather boost, with the Meteor Mash, of course, Bullet Punch Meteor Mash, in case there's any clarification needed there. Meteor Mash Metagross, still really good. And Meteor Mash Metagross still has duo-worthy DPS. However, you do have to be basically maxed out. Now, aside from these somewhat bourgeois counters to the Terrakion, just about everything that's good works for this raid. Terrakion is a fighting and rock-type Pokemon, and rock-types at a base are weak to just about everything, and the fighting type doesn't really help it out that much. There's no, like, balance going on there as far as weaknesses go. So water types, grass types, ground types, fighting types, all of them super effective to Terrakion. On top of that, we also got fairy type damage coming in from the fighting type side and psychic types coming in. So yeah, Terrakion's super weak to just about like everything that's good. So even if you don't have the best counters or you don't have them with a weather boost, here are 4 of the better counters with a weather boost. As you may notice, they're just about at Meteor Mash Metagross or Psychic Mewtwo's level, and definitely behind Psystrike. But yeah, if you don't have all the best stuff for this raid, but you're not trying to get like the duo in or something like that, then your high level, like basically anything that's good is going to work out really well for this raid. So I think Terrakion will definitely be a nice laid back raid experience for players. And I think a lot of casual groups will be able to take this thing on. One really cute thing to point out here is Jirachi is actually an optimal counter for this raid. Now, I'm not telling you to go out and max out a Jirachi right now, but if you have maxed out a Jirachi or you have the desire to do it, I think Terrakion is going to be the only raid where Jirachi has this much swag. And the main reason why is because, well, Doom Desire, super good charge move, but it's also completely overshadowed by Meteor Mash Metagross here, but Confusion is a better fast move than Bullet Punchers and Headbutt is, and as a result, it does allow the combo of those two moves being super effective against Terrakion allows Jirachi to actually be really good for this raid. So I think that's pretty cute. And then thinking about Psychic, being worse than Psystrike, being worse than Meteor Mash, Psychic Metagross is also a boss for this raid. It doesn't have duo-worthy DPS per se, but it is a very tanky option and very powerful option for fighting this thing in general. But I wouldn't necessarily say it'd be a good idea to evolve your best Metagross right now for this particular raid. Just use the Psychic, because so many other things already work. You're not getting the duo in, and later in December, we will be getting the Community Day Revival event. So if you're going to evolve your best Metagross, you may as well evolve it then when you can get the Meteor Mash on it. Another thing to point out here is Garchomp, once again, just like with Cobalion, missed the breakpoint to be on Groudon's level. When they do have the Weather Boost, they are roughly on the same level, but man, that slight difference in attack stat coming to bite Garchomp once again. And if you're wondering why I don't have Excadrill on this graph, or Rhyperior for that matter, although Rhyperior really doesn't do a whole lot of ground things. The reason why they're not on is because they're weak to 2 of the charge moves of this guy, and they're already like flaky counters to begin with, but if you really do want to use them, they definitely aren't bad. And if you're curious about Psychic versus Synchronoise on the Gallade and the Gardevoir, it is slightly like different. Like it's like the bottom of Dialga's like chin here is basically where Synchronoise is versus Psychic. And then for Gardevoir, it's like just like beneath the Executor. That's where the performance would fall. So Psychic, definitely the better move. But if you are using Synchronoise, it's really not all that different. And you're not making the duo. So that's like my fallback for everything. Like, yo man, it's good, it's powered up, it doesn't make the duo, whatever man, just use it. And then here you can see Psychic Supremacy, the Legacy Psychic, over the other moves for Alakazam, which would be Future Sight, and then also the Legacy Dazzling Gleam, also basically on the same level as Future Sight here. Man, poor Kingler. Kingler is supposed to be like the king of water-type Pokemon, and yet people say, Ryan Swag, why do you rep Kyogre and Swampert still? Is it because they're tankier and their tankiness allows them to outperform Kingler's higher DPS in a lot of different situations? Yeah, that might be part of it. That's kind of long-winded. But yeah, poor Kingler. Glass Cannon roll over here. We got some relevant resistance pop in. We got some big whale bulk happening. Oh yeah, another wild thing to throw in there as far as Terrakion's counters go, like another weird piece of Terrakion trivia. Bullet Punch Heavy Slam Machamp isn't like terrible. I think its DPS is like 19, so it doesn't make the graph, just misses. Darn, right? But the bad moves on Machamp aren't terrible for this raid. So, man, those times when you're fighting Cobalion with a random group of people and you just see Heavy Slam roll on in, I mean, it's still going to hurt to see it, but it's not terrible anymore. It still contributes to trio-worthy DPS, which I think is kind of a win in a really weird way. Then as far as Mewtwo's fast moves are concerned, Confusion and Psycho Cut are basically on the same level. As far as their breakpoints go, the 35.5 and the 27 is for either move, but not both moves. I can't remember which one it is really, but when I graphed them both out, so they're still like parallel, like 35.5, breakpoint for Confusion, and then 35.5. It's not the breakpoint for Psycho Cut, but I simmed a Psycho Cut 1 right next to it. The bullet points were basically on top of each other, so using Confusion or Psycho Cut really isn't that big of a deal for Mewtwo anymore, especially with the Psystrike. When it comes to the Psychic, Confusion is a little bit more consistently better than the Psycho Cut is, but the difference is truly negligible, so I wouldn't really worry about it too much. And then both moves have a breakpoint at like level 39 or level 39.5 anyways, so it's all basically a wash. They sim out to basically be the same Mewtwo, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. Oh yeah, and if you're curious about the breakpoints on some of the other Pokemon featured here, here's a handy-dandy list for that. So now that I've exhausted talking about Terrakion's various counters, including Heavy Slam Machamp, let's get into it in the meta. So as far as Terrakion goes in the raid attack meta, it's really freaking good, man. It's a rock-type Pokemon, it gets Smackdown, it gets Rock Slide. What more could you want from it? Now, in the DPS department, it does lose out to Rampardos, who is the rock-type DPS god, but Rampardos is also very glassy, and sometimes that glassiness can bite Rampardos due to lost charge moves or having to cause you to relobby, which causes a drop in your DPS because all the time you're spending relobbying your stuff is time that you're not dealing damage. So Terrakion, very tanky, solid, consistent rock-type attacker. However, Rampardos and Tyranitar are both very good at their jobs still, so if you already got a whole bunch of those maxed out, Terrakion, maybe not the most hype thing ever. Maybe power up just one to get that different flavor of rock type because different weaknesses. But if you already got Tyrantars and Rampardos all set, then Terrakion's not that big of a deal. Now another cool thing with Terrakion as a SmackDown Rock Slide haver is Rocket Battles. Yeah, technically a better Rock-type Pokemon for Rocket Battles than SmackDown Tyranitar is. So if you don't have the SmackDown Tyranitar, and you've been watching all these YouTube guides and reading all these Reddit posts telling you to get a SmackDown Tyranitar, but you're like, hey man, I don't even have one, well, Terrakion can be a bit of salvation for you in that respect. However, we do have the Community Day Revival event happening in mid-late December, and that is an opportunity for you to evolve into a SmackDown Tyranitar. If you got your Larvitars prepped, if you don't, get your Larvitars prepped, go for some lucky trades, because SmackDown Tyranitar is still a boss. Now, that does open up a door, a little question here. Who's the better rocket counter? Terrakion or SmackDown Tyranitar? And to be frank with it, they're both fine. Whichever one you have powered up and ready to go is probably going to be the better one. I would lean more towards Tyranitar because Tyranitar also has Crunch, which can be really big. And then when it comes to a lot of these rocket battles with the inflated stats, having a double resistance to moves, in Tyranitar's case, Psychic, can also be pretty clutch for taking them down. So I feel like overall, Tyranitar is probably going to be better for most rocket battles, but having Terrakion ready definitely wouldn't be a bad idea either. Then as far as Terrakion's use goes in PvP, its only place is really going to be in the Master League, and it really doesn't have a place in the Master League. It doesn't have anything to really threaten Dialga with, doesn't have anything to threaten the Master Giratina with, and then all of the off-meta stuff that's up in there also is super effective against Terrakion, like Venusaur, Swampert, Steel-type Pokemon, all really good. All of them just hammer the heck out of Terrakion. Terrakion's just a little bit too vulnerable for the Master League at this time. And that is Terrakion, the raid boss that is weak to just about everything that's even halfway good in this game. I feel like this will be a really refreshing experience for Tier 5 raid bosses, where before people might have the right counters, but they might not have the right moveset, etc. I feel like it's going to be very difficult for people to not have very okay counters to this raid boss. And then of course, if you are into the duo, it does seem to be a pretty low cap, just like level 30 Mewtwo's, especially the ones with the Psystrike, definitely make the duo pretty smooth. And if you do have a bunch of Meteor Mash Metagrosses and you're like, oh man, the buffed Psychic and the Psystrike on the Mewtwo have stolen its thunder, it still gets the duo in. And it's a very tanky counter. And if it's snowing outside, then hey man, it's even better. If you got any questions on this content, comment below, let me know what's up, and I'll be happy to help you out. And if you enjoyed this content, you want to see more like it, well, make sure to subscribe to SwagTips. SwagTips. By the way, forgot to mention, until December 2nd, there's this friendship event going on in Pokemon Go, where being friends with somebody does even more of a bonus for your damage in raids. So the breakpoints I have on the graph are correlated with normal best friendship, so the best friendship you're going to be experiencing from the 2nd onward to the 17th. But expect to have an even easier time slapping that guy Terrakion from now until December 2nd.